Hey friends, it's Corey from Hey Let's Make Stuff. In today's video, we're going to be doing an easy Cricut project. So we are going to be making twin shirts. I have 8-year-old twins and I thought this would be a really fun project. If you don't have twins, that's totally fine. These shirts can work for siblings, best friends, or for that dreaded twin day at school when you have no idea what to send your kids in. This video will also be a little bit different because I am going to be talking a little bit more about my personal journey as a twin mom and a little bit about our birth story. I just thought it would be fun to share. It's something I really like talking about, so I thought I would just get a little bit more personal in this video. That being said, if you have any sort of infertility issues or maternal trauma or anything like that, I wanted to give you a heads up that I am going to be diving into the weeds about babies a little bit more. And if you need to just skip this video, I totally understand. If you want to do a similar project, I will go ahead and link a different video on how to make t-shirts with your Cricut down in the description. I have a free SVG file for you for this project. You can find that in my craft library by going to heyletsmakestuff.com/library. There you can request the password and then go back to that same page to log in. There are two ways you can find file C477 in my library. The first is to scroll down just a little bit on the page, and under the chronological section, you'll see a button for SVGs and clip art. Click that button and it will take you down to the section and you should be able to find C477. The other way is to use the search function on your computer. So that's Control F if you're on a PC, Command F if you're on a Mac. You can search for C477 and you'll be taken right to it. Once you've located the file, you can click that first link and it will download a zip to your hard drive. If you click the second link, you will be taken to the blog post for this video if you'd like to learn more. Inside the zip, there are actually two SVG files for this project. One is a layered file in case you want to make a more colorful project, and the other is a single layer file, which is what I'm going to be using today. Before we get started crafting, let me tell you a little bit about the origin of our twin story. So I have two very close friends who walked through infertility. Thankfully, both of them have kids now, but I was able to see just how difficult it was on them to sort of walk this journey. So I sort of assumed, because those were two of my very closest friends, that I might have problems, even though these things are not related at all. But I just sort of assumed that I would also have a hard time getting pregnant. Well, the opposite happened. I found out in less than a month that I was pregnant. And my husband and I went to our first OB appointment. And in that appointment, she has the ultrasound wand on my belly and she goes, "And there's baby. And baby number 2. And I will always remember how she said that because my mind, you know, your life changes in just that little instant. You go from thinking, oh, I'm going to have a baby to, oh my gosh, I'm having twins. It had never crossed my mind that we would have twins. We do not have twins in our family. I don't really know anybody who had twins at that point. I mean, it really was one of those things that just never crossed my mind, so to hear it come out of her mouth was an enormous shock. My husband's jaw absolutely hit the floor. It was like a cartoon. And finally he managed to say to our OB, "How did this happen?" And she looks at him right in the eye and she goes, "You were there, weren't you?" Which was hilarious and it really broke the tension. So by the time we left that appointment, I was still terrified, but actually a little bit excited to be pregnant with twins. Let me pause in my story there for just a minute to tell you what you're gonna need for this project. You can use any Cricut you have. I'm using my Cricut Maker 3. If you have the Cricut Joy, you're going to be a little bit limited on size, but you can still make this project. You're also going to need a green cutting mat, as well as the material you're going to use for your project. So I'm using Caesar Easy Weed HTV, just in white because I'm using that single layer SVG. You're also going to need a weeding hook, a lint roller, as well as some sort of heat press. So I'm using my small Cricut Easy Press. You can use a larger heat press, whatever you have. And finally, you will need your shirts. So I'm using two super soft tri-blend BELLA+CANVAS tees, and I'm actually going to talk a little bit more about these tees later in this video. To set up our project, let's hop over to Cricut Design Space. Here I am in Cricut Design Space. I've uploaded my SVG file. Again, I'm using that sort of single color SVG file, and I have resized it to be 8 inches tall. That's about the height I wanted for my shirts. You'll notice over here in the layers panel that I have kept the image and the word separate. So I have the hamburger and I have better. I did this so that you could add your own text down here more easily, or you could choose a different font and delete what I have and use a different font if you'd like. I'm going to use this font, so I'm going to choose my hamburger and the word better. I'm going to go to combine and unite. That way they will cut together on the mat. I'm going to do the same with my fries, combine, unite, and now they'll cut together on my mat. I'm also going to select everything and make it white just because that is the color of heat transfer vinyl I'm using. Once your file's all set up, you can click Make. Here you'll want to select how you want to load your project. I'm using a mat, so I'm choosing on mat, and I'm making sure that 12 by 12 is selected. Now you can see here that Cricut Design Space thinks I need 2 mats, but I really don't. So I'm going to click on the second mat, I'm going to choose those 3 dots, and I'm going to click Move Object. Then I can move it to that first mat because they will both fit on here. You'll see that my actual boxes overlap, and that's why your Cricut doesn't think they can both fit on the same mat, but they can, and that move tool is really handy. I'm also going to mirror this mat because we are using HTV. Once that's done, I'm going to click Continue, and Cricut Design Space will connect to my Cricut. I'm going to choose Everyday Iron-On, and then we'll go and put our material on the mat. When you're working with HTV, you want that shiny side down on the mat. So I'm going to place it down on the mat here, just like this. This mat is getting a little bit old. I think it'll work. I have this extra material at the end, but I'm going to go ahead and leave it. Then you can go ahead and load your mat into your machine and your Cricut will cut your project. I've cut the excess material off the bottom of my mat, and now I'm going to weed my project. And while I weed my project, I'm going to tell you about the next part of our birth story. So I thought I was going to be pregnant forever. I had a very easy twin pregnancy compared to a lot of people. All of my numbers looked good, all of this, and I was pretty comfortable for most of my pregnancy. So I honestly thought I was going to be one of those twin moms who goes all the way and has like 2 10-pound babies. But my boys had other ideas, as they often do. And at 32 weeks, my water broke. Now we were told that my boys were fraternal, which means that they had separate sacs and separate placentas. So really it was just baby A's water that broke, and it was just nicked. And so the doctors wanted to keep me on hospital bed rest for another 3 weeks. So I was 32 weeks when I got to the hospital, and they wanted to keep me on hospital bed rest for another 3 weeks. They wanted to keep those babies cooking as long as possible. So I started hospital bed rest, which if you've ever been on bed rest, you think, oh yeah, you get to lay around all the time. No, it is absolutely miserable and very, very hard on your body. It really hurts to lie in bed all day, especially when you are pregnant. And so it was really uncomfortable. And then on day 5 of my hospital bed rest, I woke up and I knew something wasn't right. I was experiencing pain way too low. And so we called the doctor, and she brought in a little ultrasound machine, and we found out that Mr. Baby A had kicked through my cervix, which, let me tell you, you don't want to be kicked there. So we knew that we were having an emergency C-section. Thankfully, it was sort of a slow emergency. It's not like the babies were in danger. They were monitoring them. Everything seemed fine. But I did have to call my husband to come to the hospital because he was still staying at home. And so he got to the hospital, thankfully got there on time, and I had my C-section. And I'm going to stop right here for just a second to give a huge shout out to the Kaiser Roseville team in Northern California. They did such an amazing job with my birth, and I will always be thankful for the doctors and nurses, and especially the anesthesiologists that were on call that day. So my boys were born early at 32 weeks and 5 days. They were rushed off to the NICU, my husband followed, and then I was sort of alone, which, you know, they don't really talk about this when your kids go to the NICU, how just lonely it is as you're sitting there getting sewn up from your emergency C-section. But it was what it was, and I feel like I handled it pretty well. Callum weighed 3 pounds 14 ounces when he was born. Sebastian weighed 4 pounds 11 ounces when he was born. Everything up to this point, I feel like I handled really well. And then things went downhill. So I ended up having a very difficult recovery from my C-section. I ended up with some unexplained pain that was so bad I was passing out, just 0 stars for that pain. So our boys were in the NICU for about 24 days, and honestly, it was a nightmare. The NICU is such an amazing place for babies. It's not so great for recovering moms, at least ours wasn't. It's uncomfortable. It's just very difficult to be a NICU parent. If you are a NICU parent, I know that we are part of a special club and it sucks, but I totally understand. During that time, I started developing postpartum depression, and later I would learn that the whole experience would give me complex PTSD, which thankfully over the years I've worked out through therapy, but honestly, it was just probably the most difficult thing I've ever experienced in my life. Not only were the boys in the NICU, we found out that Sebastian needed surgery, which thankfully went really well. My mom was dealing with cancer. Thankfully, she's fine as well. And my brother and sister-in-law, who I adore, had decided to move across the country, which was just very difficult knowing that they were not going to be near us much longer. After 24 days, we were able to bring the boys home from the NICU, which was amazing because who wants to be in the NICU? And honestly, I don't remember much of that first year. it was a complete blur. My husband was and still is absolutely my equal partner in parenting, so he was up for those night feeds, washing bottles, all sorts of stuff. He is amazing and still is. And 8 years later, I can tell you that having 2 8-year-olds is about 1,000,000% easier than having 2 infants. I have my pieces weeded and I've cut out each image separately. Now I want to talk a little bit more about these Bella Canvas tees. So one of the things we learned about prematurity is that often premature babies can have sensory issues at a higher rate than the regular population of babies. Of course, full-term babies can also have issues, but preemies are particularly susceptible to having sensory issues. And we learned that firsthand. So thankfully my boys do pretty well with most things, but one of the things that really gets them is stuff on their skin. So I have to be really careful when I'm shopping for them that I'm picking outfits that they're gonna wear. For example, there are a lot of color-blocked kids t-shirts out there, which means that, they're one color here, a different color here, and a different color on the bottom, and they have seams right across the middle. Those are like a no-go in our family. So I just have to be more aware as I'm shopping that I'm picking things that they're actually going to wear. That's why I love these Bella Canvas shirts so much. The tri-blend in particular is so soft, and I have made the boys so many shirts using this particular type of blank, and they are often the shirts they go to most often. Do I cut these tags out of the shirts? Yes, I do. If anybody at Bella Canvas is listening, I would really love for you to start printing in the back of the shirt instead, but cutting out the tags is not difficult. But overall, these are absolutely my favorite shirts to craft with for my sensory kiddos. All right, let's finish up our shirt. So I do have my Easy Press mat here on my desk, and I put my shirt on top of it. I'm going to start by lint rolling my shirt just to remove any hair or dust or anything that could impede how well our HTV adheres to the shirt. Then I'm going to pre-press my shirt for 15 seconds. Because I'm using this sort of smaller Easy Press, I am going to do this in 2 sections. I'm just going to kind of pre-press the top here and the bottom. Pre-pressing removes any moisture and also gives you a really nice flat surface to make your project. Next, I'm going to put my transfer down on my shirt. Now I'm just going to eyeball this, but if you want to use a t-shirt ruler, I will link to my video all about using 4 different types of t-shirt rulers. Just like this. I want to make sure the word better is straight, so it looks a little crooked to me. There we go. Yeah, that's better. I have my Cricut Easy Press set to 315 for 15 seconds, and because again this image is a little bit bigger than my press, I am going to double press it. Depending on your HTV, you can choose to peel this when it's still warm or when it cools off. Lately, I've been having more luck when I've just let things cool entirely, so I'm going to let this cool and then come back and remove the carrier sheet. Ready to see our final project? Let's go ahead and peel back this carrier sheet, just like this. If you are having issues getting your HTV to stick, I also have a video for that, which I will link to in the description. All right, in the overhead shot here, you can see that I have finished both shirts. We have the better with the hamburger and together with the fries. These really are perfect shirts for any twins, siblings, best friends you have in your life. The final fun piece of our twin story is that we were told we were having fraternal twins. We had separate sacs, separate placentas, and we just assumed that was correct. And when they were born, it was actually fairly easy to tell them apart. To start, they were in their own nicely labeled boxes in the NICU. And because Sebastian weighed a full pound more than Callum, and you only weigh 4 pounds total, you could really tell the difference between the 2 boys. My husband and I felt like we could tell them apart all the time. We really knew their faces, but other people could not tell them apart. So when they were about 6 months old, we've decided to get a DNA test done. And that's because not all fraternal twins are actually fraternal. Some studies say that up to 20% of fraternal twins are actually identical. So let's have a little biology lesson here. Normal fraternal twins are 2 eggs and 2 sperm, and you get 2 babies. With identical twins, you get an egg that splits. Normally that egg splits sometime around day 4 or 5, and you get 2 babies in 1 sac, sometimes sharing a placenta. But there's also another option, and that is that that egg splits early, so you end up with identical twins in separate sacs with their own placenta. This is way more times than I thought I would ever say placenta on my YouTube channel. We knew it was a possibility that they were identical. My husband and I thought, no way, they look so different, we can easily tell them apart, they are definitely fraternal. But we got the test results around Christmas time when they were about 6 months old, and they are identical. So if you know anything about twins, you'll know that fraternal twins are the type that run in families. They also happen a lot because of people doing fertility treatments. And then identical twins just sort of happen and nobody really knows why. So having identical twins actually makes a little bit more sense to me than having fraternal twins, because we have no twins in our family and we didn't do any sort of fertility treatment. So my sweet boys came out of nowhere, and I'm so happy that they did. All right, I am back here with my boys. We have...
I'm Callum. And I'm Sebastian.
Callum and Sebastian. How old are you guys?
8.
8. Yeah? Do you like being 8?
Yeah.
8 is a good age, right?
But my favorite was 7.
Your favorite was 7. Well, I'd be okay if you go back there. All right, so they are wearing the shirts that we made. Can you guys kind of show off your shirts? We've got better, together. You guys are kind of on the wrong sides. You guys want to switch real fast? Ready, go.
But I'm better.
I know, but it's backwards in the camera.
Oh.
There we go. Better, together. Do you guys think being twins makes you better together?
Yeah.
What's your favorite part about being a twin?
I don't know.
You don't know?
Having someone to play with.
Having someone to play with? What about you?
Getting double the cupcakes.
Getting double the cupcakes. That is always nice. All right, we practiced saying goodbye. So do you remember what you're gonna say?
If you enjoyed this video, give it a like. Follow my mom's channel for more Cricut content.
See you next week.